Hello. Okay, we're going live with Yelena from My Blooming Heart Hypnotherapy. So let's see. Let's add her. And we got some questions. We have some questions already for her. So we're gonna make that happen and get all the stuff we need. Okay. Oh,
Hey,
perfect.
that was
I
so
positioned
fast.
myself low on the screen because I know how the lives are. Good
Yeah.
morning. Hi, Jay. Hi, everyone who's joining us. I'm with Yelena from My Blooming Heart Hypnotherapy,
Mhm.
and we're gonna learn a lot of stuff today. I already have two questions coming in from DM this morning for you, so we'll get into that.
Mhm.
But they were the same question. It's funny because we're all curious about what is hypnotherapy. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, so we can just have you introduce yourself, let people join. Thanks for coming on, everyone. So Yelena,
Uh-huh.
please tell us about yourself.
Uh, sure. And let me know if the connection is okay, the internet
So
connection.
far, so good. You're
So far,
coming
so
in
good.
crystal clear.
Beautiful. Because I'm in Hawaii and it feels like far away from everybody else on this planet. And it always feels like a miracle when people actually can hear me and see me. And thank you, the technological gods out there, because my business has been
Seriously.
online primarily since the COVID time, because COVID basically made me do it, as I told you in my email. Because I was a social worker. But anyway, I'm Yeliena Pilates. I'm the owner of My Blooming Heart Hypnotherapy and Coaching, and I'm an anxiety specialist because anxiety being my own thing. I wouldn't say it was crippling, throughout my 20s, but it was there. And I was never really aware of it fully until I went to grad school in 2017, still living in New York City, already being over it, but still pushing, trying to make that work for me. And I learned social work, wanted to be a therapist, something that I wanted to be since I was little, growing up in Russia. But in Russia, when I was growing up at that time, being a therapist, it was like being a ballerina. I was also dancing throughout my childhood. It wasn't really a profession that my parents saw me doing. It's like, no, like you're going to be a banker. So I went into finance. I studied finance for 4 years. And then I came to the States, or I'm kind of like jumping along in this story, but it's all going to make sense. It's all
Yeah, yes, yeah.
At the age of 19, I came to the States for the first time, went to Atlantic City, went back, came back the next year, and I was like, New York City, you're full of opportunities. I feel like I am just dying inside in Russia. Not because Russia is bad for any reason, but because I was on a path that wasn't satisfying to me whatsoever. And I took a huge leap of faith. Now I'm like, okay, let's acknowledge that because I had no plan whatsoever. I just had my best friend and the desire to do something else with my life. And I stayed. I was 20, and 9 years after that, I fell in love with New York. Like five years in it, I was like, oh my God, this is the best city in the world. And then 5 years in, I'm like, and you know what? I'm start seeing certain things I don't like about it, and they start being more and more obvious. And on the 9 year mark, I was like, okay, this is it. I'm graduating from my grad school. I am out. I didn't get the position I wanted at a place where I was interning, and this is a blessing in disguise. I'm packing my stuff, letting go of everything. And at that time, that same month, a long-term friend of mine who moved to Hawaii came over and visit, and we finally had a successful date because we had a few of them prior to that. That was total failure, and we fell in love. And instead of moving to the West Coast, which I was planning on doing, I went to Hawaii, and you and I talked about it. Um, so 3 years, no, 4 years since that, today we're actually going to have our ring ceremony. We did get married 3 years ago, but it was like 5 people there because it was in the middle of COVID, and we didn't have rings. We didn't buy them. We were like marriage, wedding, like who cares? Like we're very like low key when it comes to those things. He's planning the whole thing, the whole like ring
Oh,
exchange ceremony. He's
nice.
I know, right? He's gonna be cooking. He like put some lights. I went out and like help our friends to clean up their space a bit. It's our friend's property. But we are excited. So yeah, so that
I'm
was a
excited
lot.
for you. But what a great story. I mean, just
Yeah.
like really full circle. And it's funny, the New York and the Hawaii, how different that is.
Right,
And
yeah.
I don't know if New York like arouses in you more anxiety than Hawaii does, or do we just carry our anxiety with us regardless
Mm.
of environment? What have you found?
Well, I definitely have to say that, of course, New York City is much more stimulating for the nervous system, period. I went there in May and I was walking down the midtown with my friend, and I was like, oh my God, I have no idea how I lived there for so long. There was like sirens, people pouring cement with like all that drilling going on, and just like people walking on top of people, cars honking, like you can get an idea already how intense it can be. But the funny thing is, living in New York City, you eventually learn how to isolate yourself, sort of like go inside if you are capable of it. I guess I can't say that everybody can do that, but you have to. And in New York City, I learned to meditate because I thought I was going nuts. Otherwise, I had to create that. But definitely carry some of that over here. You would think like, oh, moving to Hawaii, perfectly fine and peaceful place. But no, things tend to follow us because they become a bit of a pattern and they need to be undone from the inside. And environment helps, but ultimately self-work that helps the most.
I agree. Yeah. And so how have you found your grounding? I know you have your green tea right now. What have you found grounds you each and every day?
Um, ground green tea is definitely just to like wake me up because it's early here. It doesn't, but it does ground me. Like the morning
Mhm.
ritual, like some sort of a routine. Definitely meditation and a little bit of an intention setting. If I can squeeze some exercising in there, that's great, but meditation been a must of to put that buffer zone between me and the world,
Yes.
and then everything is just easier.
Yeah. Yeah. I know when you start, I'm a big fan of morning rituals.
Hmm.
So, and when you start off, you kind of put yourself first and you just orient yourself to a more peaceful welcome to the day.
Yeah.
And I think that really does lend itself to everything following that same sentiment, that same headspace,
Hmm.
and heart space.
Yeah.
So, so we got the DM questions
Uh-huh.
from a couple people asking, what is hypnotherapy?
That's a great question. Like after the question, what is hypnosis, is like the second popular, which
Well,
kind
and
of makes sense,
I think
of
that's
course.
what they're wondering. And
Right.
maybe like a lot of us are thinking, is it
Hmm.
hypnosis or what? I guess what's the difference?
Mm-hmm. All right. So, how I usually like to answer the what is hypnotherapist question is I tell people that it's a tricky question because there is no such a thing as one thing like this is hypnotherapy and everything else is not. Like if we try to define it, we will run into a lot of difficulties doing so because depending on a practitioner you go into, people come to the hypnotherapy world with a different background, with a different toolbox already. And let's say if you're coming from the work that I've been doing, social work, therapy work, you coming with some sort of a modality that you're already working with, which is like cognitive behavioral therapy, psychoanalytic, social solution focus, which is mine. There are like 700s of them. So
Wow. So you have to
or maybe
choose
something
one
like
to
that.
study.
Well, it's nice to choose one to study just to go deep on it, and then you actually, of course, you have to add. Right now, I personally like have there's like three of them that I draw upon, but let's say this is my base. And this is the most important thing when it comes to hypnotherapy, because the hypnosis itself is more of a delivery method for the suggestions that are guided by those frameworks. So whatever you go, depending on a person, whatever they guided by in their mind, really changes a lot what they're focusing on in the work they're doing with a particular human being. So it's so hard to say what is hypnotherapy, because not just because everybody's different in terms of what they stuff their hypnotherapy with, if I may say so, but it's also very different on how they invite you into the experience. Some people are trained to um, not to use tailoring to the person. Some people are using like cookie cutter approaches, and there's nothing wrong with this, but at the same time, it's going to give you one experience versus someone who is actually sitting there and picking up on something what is naturally absorbing to you, instead of like telling you about the beach, which I don't necessarily do with people, because I don't know if a beach is a relaxing place for you. For me personally, forest is relaxing. If you put me on a beach laying down in my entering the hypnosis state kind of time, I will get antsy because I can't lay on a beach. You know, that's not my place of absorption.
Right, right.
So it's but I have to say, I guess hypnotherapy does have this quality of absorbing in the experience. There's something that needs to happen that invites you really to turn inwardly inside. That's a great way to say it. That would absorb you into the experience and give you an experience versus just linearly talking about something. So instead of like telling a person, you got to be aware of you negatively projecting into the future, like when people think ahead of time it's something that's going to happen, on the way how we interpret events somehow negatively from the get-go. I will tell them a story of like how let's say, and it's a common thing that happens to all the humans in the world, we text someone and they haven't gotten back to us, and it's been a few hours, and we start imagining they don't like us, they died, and they got hurt, you know, like you name it, there's a whole
Oh yeah.
like variety of things, right? And that's an example of us doing that. And at the same time, I can invite them to like see it as an example and become aware of, no, unknown doesn't have to mean negative things. It can be positive. How many times that happened to you, but the other person came out for whatever they were doing, and you know, something happened and they couldn't respond to you, but nothing really bad happened. And for them is to, for the person on the receiving end, is just to take a moment and really like sit with it and like, oh right, you're like, you know, I that's true. And it works better when somebody is not necessarily responding back to me immediately, when they're not talking. And this is why I feel like the hypnotherapy is just an opportunity for people to sit with certain ideas and mindset that otherwise not really well absorbed, because we just keep on talking and we don't give it a chance to really hit well.
Yeah.
I hope that answers
I think
question.
so. I mean, it's very individualized, sounds like, right? It's
Right.
very
Mm-hmm.
individualized. So it feels like the sessions are so important that you really understand where they're coming from. You probably do a deep dive with them.
Mm-hmm.
And why this feels important, if you're new to my account, the Minimalist Entrepreneur Company, we here help moms, right, juggle the busy day-to-day of business and babies with space and ease. And I
Yes.
wanted you on because you help female
Yeah.
entrepreneurs help that,
Yeah.
because I think anxiety really does come attached to being a woman. And maybe even
Yeah.
well, I know men do too, but especially coming into motherhood, there's just
Mm-hmm.
there's just not only your own anxiety, but your anxiety for how you're raising your kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then that, coupled with the anxiety around business building and what am I doing? Where do I start? That's a lot of the questions I get from my clients. Where do I start?
Mm-hmm.
What should I be doing with the few free hours a day I have? Um,
Yeah.
Hi, Jess. Hi, Jay. Talk about it. Talk all about it. Joined. Vets Run LA. May's Daily Art joined. Welcome, guys. If you're just joining, we have Yeliena here, and she is an anxiety hypnotherapist for female entrepreneurs. So
Mm-hmm.
we're just getting the vibes from her on what she does, how she does it. And
Mm-hmm.
she explained to us what hypnotherapy is. So if you missed that, you'll have to catch the replay.
Sure.
Um, but how are you minimizing the hustle, which is
Mm-hmm.
primarily the goal, I think, for a lot of us
Mm-hmm.
nowadays?
Mm-hmm. How am I minimizing the hustle? I have my notes, but actually what's coming through right now
Mm.
is that I feel like I'm working a lot, to be honest. But for me, hustle doesn't start with like a lot of work. It's in my mind. It's in my nervous system. When I feel rushed, when I feel the sense of urgency all the time, this is the hustle,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
having a lot to do. A lot to do, that's just like, okay, that's my life for however long I know it's going to be like. Of course, I'm going to create bubbles of space and self care in it. And at the same time, hustle for me is like that mindset is like, oh my God, I have so much to do. I'll never get everything done. There's never enough time. Like, this is what I'm trying to work with because you, there's a big difference in my day when I step into like the same kind of day with that or with more of a regulated nervous system, calmer mindset. Yes, I have so much to do. That's the reality I'm living in either one of those days, and what makes the difference in how I approach it. And of course, the first thing that happens is like you look at your to-do list and you're like, oh my God, this is how on this planet I'm gonna get it all done. And I think the first thing that ever really helped me when I started my business is I'm just gonna choose up to 3 tasks, maybe even one if it's like big when it comes to my business and when it comes to my plant babies because I'm a plant mama. I'm not a human baby
Yeah.
plama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, that's,
And then,
I know being a plant mama is a lot of work still too, right? There's a
yes.
lot of love they need and nourishment and watering and talking to.
Right. They definitely don't get talked enough in my world. And they're like, I'm
I've noticed
making
that helps though. It
I
helps.
I noticed that too. I noticed that too. Um, I learned my lesson when I started too many plants. That's, I think, this is when I learned the prioritization when it comes to my business and my garden. When I just had a garden, I think like when you just have a business, and I think that was my experience starting a business too. I want to do everything at the same time,
Oh yeah.
all the platforms, everything. And then you're like, oh, that's actually not possible.
No, not at
Um,
all. There's one focus
yes,
at a time, really that,
yes,
yeah. And
yeah.
it's finding what that focus is that your business
Mm-hmm.
needs. And
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're working with female entrepreneurs, the anxiety is coming from thinking it all has to get done now. A lot of the anxiety,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Still working with that, I would say I'm 1 year in like doing my business, still very much part-time now, turning full-time. But every time I'm cutting my veggies because I'm cooking, and there's thought comes in into my mind, but I should can steal all the show, like all the even enjoyment from like doing the thing I'm doing right now. And I'm learning and I'm to refocus myself like, no, this is the most important thing right now. You're not gonna be problem solving your business at this moment because you're gonna cut yourself, and you're also gonna I'm gonna take the enjoyment and presence out of it,
For sure.
and it's ultimately not gonna feel good. Like there was a moment I was standing in my kitchen a few months ago and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to enjoy my life. I'm supposed to be happy. Because in
Wait a minute.
for the past few months, I was like going nonstop. I'm like, when am I gonna stop? Like, this is never gonna stop because there's just so much to do unless I make like intentional bubbles and intentional desire. Like, I'm not gonna let it get to me because my husband freaks out periodically as well. I'm like, we're supposed to be happy. Wait.
Yeah. Yeah, Nourish with Jess joined, Declutter with Dawn 209 joined. If you guys have any questions for Yelena, please
Yes.
just type it in. I think it's a all pervasive thing though, what you're saying. Because
Mm-hmm.
even in motherhood, there are
Mm-hmm.
times when it's not enjoyable. I came out of like just this, I don't know if it's the postpartum blues or if it was my own just depression or anxiety around,
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't think I can do it this all, like it earlier this year. And coming out
Mm-hmm.
of that, it's like, man, you really do go to the depths of despair
Mm-hmm.
when you feel that way. And how do you run a business? How do you take care of little babies when you feel that way? And coming out of it, kind of looking in hindsight, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
there's got to be a way. And that's really what I think hypnotherapy helps with. Mindset
Mm-hmm.
training, what we do over here, is so, so,
Right.
so important. The mindset, I think, is 99% of the game in business and
Mm-hmm.
life, right? How we approach things, how we come into it. How is hypnotherapy like helping mindset?
Mm-hmm. How hypnotherapy help mindset? Okay, so I guess I have to think of an example because I can't think
All,
about it
all the
otherwise.
better, all the better.
Um, hmm. The one that comes to mind right now was is about not necessarily, he wasn't an entrepreneur per se, but he got me interested in hypnotherapy as a work. I had we call them patient because we were in a medical clinic when I was an intern in a social work. I didn't really know much how to do therapy at that time, but I was learning. I was learning a lot at the same time. And he was struggling with self-critical thoughts. They were coming in for all the directions. And I think that happens a lot when you're a mom and when you're an entrepreneur. Like, couple that, like, woohoo, here we go.
Here we go.
Yeah, self-judging. Ah, such a habit too. Such a habit too. But anyway, I was trying to impart an idea on him that he has a choice about how to go about it, whether he chooses to listen to those thoughts, whether he chooses to let them go. Because this is something that we're not aware of. We just allow them to invade us when they come in, forgetting that we are here. We're responsible to either let them in or let them pass into the ether. Just
Yeah.
keep going. And I was telling him, like verbally, like, hey, you have a choice, you have a choice. And it wouldn't click. Something wasn't working for him. He would just come back in and was like, oh, I had this again. I was just feeling so sad and bad, and that was his own doing, basically, in his own mind. And mind you, he had a lot of trauma history in the past. It was not coming from nowhere, so that also needed to be unraveled as we continue with our therapy. But I realized that I just gonna tell him a story, and the story that I told him is, I think it's pretty well known. It's supposedly, I believe, from like the Native Americans. Their history is how there is a grandpa in a trial and they're sitting together, and the grandpa is telling the grandson a story about two wolves that lives in every person. And one wolf is responsible for all the good things, the appreciation, gratitude, love, kindness, honesty, you name it, etc. And there is another wolf that is hatred, jealousy, anger, irritation, frustration, blah, 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 blah. And then the grandson asked his grandparent, like, okay, so which one wins? wolf, which wolf wins out of the two of them. And the grandparent like takes a moment, pauses, and says like, the one that you feed, the one that you feed with your attention, with your thoughts, with attention and your thoughts, that's like the food that we have, and we have a choice where to give it, what part of us. And hypnotherapy does it really well. First of all, using it teaches how to do so, because it's all about amplifying our focus in a certain direction. And if we've been going in a certain pattern of like criticizing ourselves, it became such a habit that we're not even able to pause and take in a different perspective that allows us to change our mind. And hypnotherapy can, and that's what it did for him, even though it wasn't hypnotherapy, it was just a story, but that was an experience. It wasn't just like, hey, you should stop criticizing yourself because it's not good for you.
Yeah.
It was for him, it was like, oh wait, right, like this is what's going, I'm doing this is the consequence of my own doing. And hypnotherapy can do that really well to create a kind of an experience that can shift our mind and open a different door. Like, oh, okay, I'll go this way.
Yeah.
I hope that helps.
It does. It does. And I love that story. I've used it myself. That's a really, really good one.
Right.
But I think, yeah, any tool that you kind of bring into a hypnotherapy session is part of the work, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
stories included. I think that's really, really good, really important storytelling. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so how would you suggest people stay in touch with you, or how can they work with you? Just about as we close our live, how can we work with you?
Thank you for this question. I'm here on Instagram. I picked Instagram over other platforms because I'm not gonna overwhelm myself. There's too many of them, as I said earlier.
Yeah.
So my blooming heart hypnotherapy. Just send me a DM, say hello. Even if you're just interested in hypnotherapy and kind of ready to learn more about it. I love talking about it because there's a lot of misconceptions out there about hypnotherapy, and I like to just like illuminate as many people as possible when it comes to it. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's pretty much where you can find me and talk
Yes,
about hypnotherapy
follow
and how I
follow
do it.
Yelena. If you don't, just click at the top of the screen here and you'll
Right.
see her. You can click follow to get all her great advice. She's got amazing fun reels, and she always reminds me on my feed to just take a breath, just to, you know,
Thank
yeah, yeah,
you.
yeah. And you know what? I
Mhm.
before we get off, we do have a question that came
Okay.
on. How would you attack a moment of anxiety when you don't have time to get hypnotherapized?
Mm-hmm.
The word he
Oh,
used, hypnotherapized. Our
yeah,
breath
yeah.
is breath work good, walks, etc. What do you
Oh,
recommend if you
yeah.
don't have time for a hypnotherapy session?
Definitely, because anxiety comes in, throughout the day. I don't necessarily have time myself to like step out and do like self-hypnosis either, right? What I'm going for in those times is I first of all I acknowledge my attempt, and I think a lot of people do that to think our way out of anxiety, which tends to fail. We trying to like problem solve and analyze and think and think and think. A lot of times we end up hurting ourselves and actually increasing the anxiety. So if you're one of those people who try to think your way out of anxiety, you want to majority acknowledge that tendency and go for calming your body first. And that's breath work. This is walking. This is some kind of a movement. Singing. I'm not a singer, but I hum and sing because it activates my vagus nerve, and it also interrupts the mind chatter, the
Oh,
whatever I'm going through in my head at the same time. And I'm not feeding that, in terms of attention and feeding, the wolves. You're no longer feeding the anxiety by singing or whatever else that you're doing. So whatever you choose is a walk, something that is more like physical and it requires to be absorbed into present into it. Even if it's just it doesn't have to be meditating. Meditating when you're anxious, I don't recommend that because we like what we need at that moment, we need something else that is more like body-based. Meditation is very mind.
Yeah.
Mind is not as helpful when we in that moment. So I would Google, if I was that person, the vagus nerve somatic practices that will make a lot of sense as they read about them, that humming and singing and walking and all of that. Just calm your body first and then think. That's my formula.
Yeah. So get into the body first.
Yes,
Breath, movement. I love that. And he actually had those suggestions himself.
exactly. Yeah, that do that.
Oh, we have a question because we do, our heart goes out to Lahaina as it gets
Yeah.
rebuilt and to the people there.
Mhm.
Um, so, but you're not near there, right? Or
I'm on a big island. Yeah,
you're in the
I
island,
mean,
right?
Maui is next to us, but I'm far away from that side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite place? The question that came in is, what's your favorite place in Hawaii?
Ah, that's such a difficult question because on a big island, we have like 14 different climates because depending where you go, it's a very different weather.
I
So
haven't been yet
I
to Big Island.
it's amazing. Wherever you go, of course, people go to Kona because it's like the most touristy place. But I'm on the other side. I'm on the Hilo side of the island, which is a little more rainier, less sunny. That's why tourists don't come here as much. But I think if I would be moving anywhere to be there, like permanently on the island, I would go to the Hamakua coast. If anyone interested, it's just north of Hilo when you come here, and nature, like here we are in a bit of like a jungly kind of looking style
Mm,
nature.
yeah.
369 not meters, not miles, the elevation, you know.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but Hamakokos is higher, and it reminds me upstate New York, and reminds me a bit of more like a Russian nature almost. So I'm gravitating towards that. So check out Hamakua Coast, especially if you can go to waterfalls. That would be amazing.
Ooh,
Yeah.
my favorite. Okay, good tip. Um,
Yeah.
so thanks everyone for joining. Thanks, Yelena, for being on with me. This really kicks off the series of just like getting some feedback from a lot of entrepreneurs on how we're
Awesome.
minimizing the hustle. And
Mhm.
it's very, very important that we find ways to do that.
That's so true. Thank you so much for
Mwah.
having me. It was such a pleasure.
Thanks.
I believe in your cause. Please keep doing what you're doing. Everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. And likewise.
Thank
Peace,
you.
guys.
Yeah. Yay.